The air tastes of soot before you even see the flames. A dry wind slides through London's lanes, like a thief fingering shutters, rattling signboards, feeding every spark. Somewhere in the black hours after midnight, wood begins to crackle, then roar. A bell rings. Too late. Footsteps pound bare cobbles. People fling open windows and smell it: hot pitch, burning flour, the sickly sweetness of smoke swallowing a city. In 1666, London is not merely threatened, it is consumed. How does one forgotten ember in a baker's oven become a catastrophe that reshapes an empire's capital brick by brick, law by law, memory by memory? Stand close. Don't blink. The first domino is already falling. To understand the devastation that follows, we must first understand what London is before it shatters, what it sounds like when it still believes tomorrow will come. You arrive in the early 1660s, and the city feels alive in your hands. The streets are narrow and dusty, crowded with bodies, carts, and animals. Timber houses lean outward as they rise, upper floors jutting over the roadway until neighbors nearly touch across the lane. Inside, candles burn, hearths glow. Meals simmer over open flames, ordinary heat, everywhere, all the time. And yet there is no organized fire brigade, no engines, no trained force waiting in the dark. Only leather buckets, axes, and a city's own panic when the alarm comes. Source: London's size is staggering for its age, about 350,000 people packed into a maze of wood, thatch and trade. Warehouses crowd the riverfront. Hay and straw fill sheds and yards. Timber is smeared with pitch, a flammable coating that makes buildings shine and burn. Source: To understand this city at its peak, we must look at 5 pillars holding it up. Pillar 1, the river artery. The Thames is London's pulsing vein, heavy with barges, lighters, and goods. Commerce moves like blood through the city's body. Pillar 2, the timber skeleton. Wood is cheap, fast, and everywhere. London grows upward and inward, packed tight, an architectural forest, beautiful and fatal. Source: Pillar 3, the heat of daily life. Every home is a workshop. Every workshop is a furnace. Candles for light, fires for cooking, coals for trade. 1,000 small flames, each one normal. Pillar 4, the dry summer curse. A long drought bakes the city hard. Water is scarce. The houses dry like tinder waiting for a match. Source: Pillar 5, the illusion of control. London believes it can handle what comes. People have seen fires before. They think this one will be another local, containable, forgettable. Yet beneath the surface, beneath the pitch and thatch, beneath the drought and wind, this golden age is headed toward a terrifying climax. The origin point is a single address in the city, Pudding Lane, just after midnight on Sunday, 2 September 1666. The fire begins in the shop of the King's baker, Thomas Fariner, a small human moment with colossal consequences. Sparks, flour sacks, a house turning into a chimney. Source: Now, watch the dominoes. The first domino fell when heat meets architecture. These buildings are not isolated boxes, they are touching lungs. Upper stories overhang the street, nearly kissing across the alley. Once one roof ignites, the next is already sweating smoke. Source: You zoom out. Across the city, the lanes form a combustible map, narrow corridors that funnel wind like a bellows. Then you zoom in. A single ember rides that wind and lands somewhere dry. Another. The second domino is the weather: hot, dry, and windy. The wind does not merely push the fire, it trains it, giving it direction, speed, appetite. Source: The third domino is what London stores. Along Thames Street, Warehouses hold oil, wine, brandy, tar, and pitch, an invisible army of fuel waiting behind wooden doors. When these places catch, the fire's character changes. It stops being a neighborhood blaze and becomes a system self-feeding, multiplying, and then the city's defenses reveal their weakness. In 1666, firefighting is brutally simple. Buckets passed hand to hand, water squirts, axes, and firehooks meant to pull down buildings. But against a wind-driven inferno, it is like trying to drain the sea with a cup. Source. Here comes a crucial hinge in the mechanism. The idea of the firebreak destroying homes in the fire's path to starve it of fuel. It is a terrible choice, a moral knife. Pull down your neighbor's house now, or watch the whole street burn later. The king himself becomes involved. Samuel Pepys, the Navy administrator and diarist, watches the flames and carries warnings upward. In his diary for 2 September 1666, he describes rising at 3 in the morning, seeing the glow, misjudging its distance, then later climbing high at the tower and seeing the bridge-end houses all on fire. He hears it began in the King's baker's house in Pudding Lane. He watches people fling goods into the bage-end houses. River, and he sees pigeons hesitate at windows until their wings burn. Source. This is the mechanism made human, not just flame, but decision, delay, disbelief, exhaustion. Pepys goes to Whitehall. He tells King Charles II and the Duke of York that unless houses are pulled down, nothing will stop it. The king sends him to the Lord Mayor with orders, spare no houses, pull them down. Source. And then you meet the fourth domino. Authority collapses under heat. Pepys finds the Lord Mayor like a man spent, overwhelmed, confessing that people will not obey. Even power sweats and falters when a city becomes a furnace. Source. Now the fire spreads like a storm front. The Thames fills with boats carrying goods, furniture, chests, instruments. Pepys observes, hardly one lighter or boat in 3, but there was a pair of virginals in it. Music trying to float away from the end of the world. Source. The warning signs are everywhere. The wind rising, the packed streets, the lack of coordinated response, the city's own materials turning traitor. But then, everything changes. By nightfall, Pepys watches the blaze become one entire arch of fire, above a mile long, and he writes, "It made me weep to see it." Source. And in that moment, you realize the mechanism has completed its transformation. London is no longer fighting a fire. London is fighting fire itself. Now we enter the burning days. You stand in the city as the sky turns the color of a wound, red, swollen, pulsing. Smoke presses into throats. Ash drifts like dark snow. The sound is not a single roar, but a chorus. Beams snapping, tiles falling, people shouting names into a wind that steals every answer. Short sentences now. Because breath is precious. A street ignites, then another, then 10. You push through crowds. Faces shine with sweat and soot. People carry what their arms can hold, bundles of cloth, ledgers, pots, children, some drag carts. Others have no cart, no horse, no help, only hands shaking as they choose between a blanket and a Bible. London is evacuating itself. From the river, you see a nightmare in motion. Boats jammed with possessions, goods floating loose, the water reflecting a city on fire like a second London burning upside down. Pepys sees this too, everybody endeavoring to remove their goods and flinging into the river. Source. And then the fire begins to leap. The wind hurls sparks and flaming fragments, fire drops. Pepys calls them so hot that your face feels scorched even on the water. Houses ignite not because flame reaches them, but because fire rains on them. 3 or 4 houses apart. 5 or 6. Distance means nothing. Source. A micro cliffhanger forms in the smoke. You think the river will save you. It doesn't. The catastrophe deepens as the city's landmarks, its identity, begin to fall. London Bridge burns. St. Paul's Cathedral burns. By Tuesday, the fire is no longer an event at the edge of life. It is the center of everything. Source. Horror peak. Human suffering. Come closer. We narrow to one building, one roofline, one terrified hesitation. The National Archives records that Fariner and his wife escape the bakery, but their maid is too frightened to jump from the roof and becomes the first known to die. Not in battle, not by plague. By fear and flame, trapped between gravity and fire. Source. Nearby, Pepys watches pigeons cling to their nesting places, hovering at the windows until the heat takes them, wings burning, falling. It is a small detail, almost unbearable, because it reveals the same instinct in every living thing. Stay where you belong, until you cannot. Source. And around you, people do the same. They remain in their houses as long as till the very fire touched them, then run into boats across stairs, into streets that are already choking. Source. You smell the pitch melting. You feel the heat on your forearms as if the air itself has teeth. But the nightmare is still not over, because now comes the cruel arithmetic. Stopping the fire means destroying London with your own hands. King Charles II orders houses and shops pulled down to stop the spread. By Wednesday, gunpowder demolitions and organized firebreaks become the only effective answer, blowing up buildings to create empty space the flames cannot cross. It is victory by self-amputation. Source. You can hear the detonations, thuds that shake the ribs. Wood and plaster explode outward. Families watch their homes become strategic rubble. Irony peak. Tragic contradiction. Look at the churches. Pepys walks through the city and sees churches all filling with goods, people stuffing sanctuaries with possessions because stone and holiness feel safer than timber. Yet even churches burn. Even the very stones of churches, Pepys writes, prove combustible in the extremity of heat and drought. The place meant for prayer becomes a warehouse. The warehouse becomes kindling. The kindling becomes a tomb of smoke. Source. And deeper still, those who try to save their wealth may lose their refuge, and those who seek refuge may lose their lives. Good intentions stacked too tightly become fuel. Now pull back. Wide angle. The city is a map of flame. Night comes, and the fire becomes more visible. In corners and upon steeples, and between churches and houses, in a most horrid flame. Pepys says an entire arch of fire stretching for more than a mile. Source. It is not just light, it is domination. The fire redraws the sky. Scale peak. Overwhelming numbers. When the ash settles, the figures are almost impossible to hold in one mind. Roughly 13,200 houses are destroyed. 87 parish churches vanish into cinders. St. Paul's Cathedral is lost. Great civic buildings, Guildhall, the Royal Exchange are devastated, and around 100,000 people are left homeless. Source. And yet another irony, the official recorded deaths are astonishingly low in surviving accounts, even as we know the poor and undocumented can vanish without ink ever catching them. The catastrophe erases not only homes, but records, names, and certainty itself. Source. You stand amid the ruins and realize what has happened. London's old skeleton, timber and pitch, narrow lanes and overhanging floors has been shattered. The city is not merely burned. It is reshaped. And then, at last, a different sound. Not roaring. Not cracking. Not screaming. Silence. The survivors emerge as if from underwater, eyes roar, throats torn by smoke, hands blackened. The ground stays hot for days, the air still smelling of char and wet ash. Refuge forms in open spaces, and along roads out of the city people camp with what they saved, guarding bundles like small islands of a vanished life. Source. But from this ash comes a transformation slow, procedural, relentless. Rebuilding begins not as poetry but as law. The rebuilding of London Act 1666 moves the city toward a new skin, away from exterior timber toward brick and stone, and toward wider streets, space as a form of safety, air as a firebreak. Source. Key figures step into the smoke. Sir Christopher Wren becomes central to the architectural rebirth, and the city begins to imagine itself differently, less medieval maze, more engineered organism. Source. And there are unexpected consequences. Where destruction wipes out old property lines and old buildings, opportunity rises surveyors, masons, planners, merchants. Even catastrophe has an economy. London's future is being forged by shortages, by demand, by the need to build fast and build safer. Memory also becomes architecture. Near where the fire began, London raises a permanent marker. The monument, a 202-foot column, positioned 202 feet west of the source at Pudding Lane, a measured scar turned into stone. It is designed by Robert Hooke in consultation with Wren, and it even carries a hidden second life, intended as a site for scientific experiments, a kind of vertical instrument probing the sky. Source. A city that once burned for lack of organization begins, piece by piece, to organize itself through law, design, measurement, and remembrance. But the deepest rebuilding happens inside people, the moment they accept that normal can vanish overnight and still choose to begin again. Looking back, the Great Fire is not only a disaster. It is a hinge in London's identity, a moment when the city's old body is demolished and a new one is rebuilt upon the same ground. Then, timber streets leaning inward, flames able to sprint from roof to roof. Now, building codes, fire services, planned streets, and a city that treats fire not as fate, but as risk measured, trained for, mitigated. Then, people cramming church naves with their life's work, believing stone will protect it. Now, we place our trust in systems, in insurance, in regulation, in prevention structures born from earlier failures. The London Fire Brigade's own retelling makes plain how basic firefighting once was, and how completely the city had to rethink itself afterward. Source. Then, a mile-long arch of flame that makes a hardened diarist weep. Now, if you climb the 311 steps inside the monument, you stand above the rebuilt city and see continuity where there was once ruin, an urban phoenix in stone. Source. We are the direct descendants of that choice. To rebuild smarter, not simply to rebuild again. So here is the quiet question the fire leaves in your hands today. When the structures we rely on begin to burn, physical or social, do we cling to the old timber? Or do we make the painful space a safer future requires?